Four friends on vacation in New York mocked a procession of the Virgin Mary. They didn't know it, but that procession didn't cross their path by chance. But before we continue, leave a comment saying where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I'd love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. Now let's get back to this story. Ryan was 28 years old, a control freak. He organized everything: the trip, the hotel, the tickets. He sent a message to the group at 6 in the morning. We leave at 8 sharp. Whoever's late gets left behind. John was 26, the clown of the group. To him, everything was a joke. He responded to Ryan's message with a laughing voice message and a, "Okay, boss." Adam was 25, quiet. When they asked what he thought, the answer was always whatever. But there was something the others didn't know. His grandmother went to Mass every Sunday. He never mentioned it. He knew how John would react. George was 29, an engineer. He only believed in what could be measured and proven. Once a coworker told him his mother was healed after a novena. George heard the whole thing and said, "Placebo." The four had known each other since college. They had money. It wasn't inherited wealth, but they had good jobs, good salaries, and spent well. Designer clothes, expensive watches, restaurants that needed reservations weeks in advance. They knew they lived well. When they went out together, it was at that level. The world revolved around them. At least that's what they believed. The trip to New York was special. It was the first time all four were traveling together. They had planned for almost a year. The main reason was the finals of a major sporting event. Ryan had bought 4 luxury box tickets. They had cost a fortune. That morning, the plan was simple. Leave the hotel at 8, drive to the event venue, arrive early, enjoy the whole day. But at 8:15, John still hadn't come down. "I told you," said Ryan, looking at his watch for the third time in 2 minutes. "Relax, he's coming," said George, leaning against the car. Adam didn't say anything. He just kept looking at his phone. When John showed up, 8:22, Ryan's jaw was already clenched. "Good morning, family," said John, opening his arms as if he were arriving at a party. "Get in the car," said Ryan, without smiling. You know when you feel the mood is kind of tense, but nobody says anything? That was exactly it. Ryan started the car, set the GPS, and left the hotel parking lot without saying a word. The GPS screen showed they'd arrive with 15 minutes to spare. Tight, but doable. John, in the back seat, had already connected his phone to the car stereo. Loud music. He sang along, did choreography with his hands, poked Adam next to him. "This is going to be the best day of our lives," John shouted. "It will be if we get there on time," Ryan replied, without taking his eyes off the road. George, in the front seat, opened the traffic app. All green, no congestion. He took a deep breath. It was going to work out, except it didn't. About 20 minutes from the destination, traffic started getting slower. Gradually, first one car moving slowly up ahead, then 2, then 3. Suddenly all the cars stopped. "What's going on?" asked Ryan, craning his neck to try to see. "Must be construction," said John, shrugging. But it wasn't construction. When the car moved forward a bit more, Ryan could see. On the cross street, crossing the road right in front of them, there was a group of people, many people, walking slowly, very slowly. Some were praying quietly, others were singing softly, almost in a murmur. They were carrying images. They had serious faces, focused, like people who were doing something important. It was a procession of the Virgin Mary. And there were many elderly people in the group. Many. Some were walking with canes. Others were being supported by younger people. And this made the crossing even slower. Each step was careful, slow, at the pace of those who aren't in a hurry because the destination isn't a place. It's a prayer. Ryan looked at the GPS. The estimated arrival time had changed. Now it showed they would arrive late. "No, no, 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 no," Ryan repeated, hitting his hand on the steering wheel. "Are you Serious? Said George, looking out the window. John leaned between the two front seats to get a better look. When he saw the procession, his face broke into that smile he always made before saying something he shouldn't. "Dude, are you kidding me? We're stopped because of this?" said John, already laughing. Ryan honked 3 times in a row. Nobody in the procession turned around. Nobody quickened their pace. They kept walking at the same rhythm. The scene would be beautiful to anyone who was looking with different eyes. But Ryan wasn't looking with different eyes. "This is ridiculous," said Ryan. "Ridiculous." "Calm down, Ryan," said Adam from the back seat. "Calm down. We planned this all year, Adam, all year. And we're stuck here because of—" Ryan didn't finish the sentence. He just pointed at the window. John had already taken his phone out of his pocket. He was filming, recording the procession with his phone camera, laughing, making comments. "Look at this, man. Look at the speed. My grandfather walks faster than this. And he's 90 years old," said John, laughing so hard he could barely hold the phone steady. "Stop it, John," said Adam. "I'm filming for posterity. In a bit I'll post it with the caption, 'Reason why I missed the biggest event of the year,'" said John without stopping filming. George gave a half smile. He didn't laugh out loud, but he also didn't say anything to make John stop. Ryan rolled down the window. The outside air came into the car along with the soft sound of prayers. A man about 60 years old was walking with a small image in his hands, in prayer. "Move it!" Ryan shouted out the window. Nobody in the procession reacted. They kept walking. John rolled down his window too, and did worse, much worse. He looked directly at one of the images the Pilgrims were carrying. An image of the Virgin Mary, held by an elderly lady who was walking slowly, with both hands firmly on the image, and John made a dismissive gesture with his hand, a gesture that said, without words, that it was worthless, that faith, that devotion, that entire walk meant absolutely nothing. Have you ever seen someone do that? Disrespect something that's sacred to another person as if it were trash? "John, stop," said Adam. This time his voice was firmer, almost serious. "Relax, Adam." "I'm just messing around," John replied, still laughing. "Leave him alone, Adam," said Ryan. "When this thing passes, we're out of here." George didn't say anything. He just wanted it to be over. The minutes passed. The procession continued. The elderly kept their pace, and then something happened that none of the 4 forgot. A lady, an elderly pilgrim. She must have been in her early 70s. Short white hair tied back, serene face. She was walking with the group when she noticed the commotion inside the car. The irritated faces, the horn, the gestures. She stopped. She left the group of pilgrims and walked calmly to the 4 men's car. The 4 felt awkward right away. John put away his phone. Ryan stopped complaining. Nobody knew what to do. The lady reached Ryan's window, which was still down. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at them, one by one. And then she extended her hand and offered a small pamphlet. It was an image of the Virgin Mary, small, simple, the kind that fits in the palm of your hand. On the back, a prayer. Nobody moved for about 2 seconds. It was George who reached out from the back seat, took the pamphlet, and said, "Thank you," almost in a whisper. He put it in the car's glove compartment. The lady looked at them one more time and said in a calm voice, "May Our Lady protect you." Then she turned her back and returned to the group of pilgrims. Nobody said anything for about 5 seconds. And then John broke the silence. "Dude," said John, his smile already coming back, "we just got blessed." Ryan let out air through his nose, almost laughing. "At least she didn't throw holy water on the car." George shook his head. Religious pamphlet. Classic. And just like that, as quickly as the silence had arrived, it left. The 4 went back to laughing, went back to mocking. As if that moment hadn't meant anything, the procession finally finished crossing the street. Traffic started moving again. Ryan accelerated before all the cars in front even moved. "Finally," said Ryan. "That delayed us about 15 minutes," said George, looking at the GPS. "At least it made for a good video," said John, putting away his phone. "I'll post it later." Adam didn't say anything. They arrived at the sporting event late, and from there on, the procession was forgotten. The event was everything they had imagined. Noise, emotion, adrenaline. The four shouted, celebrated, filmed everything. Ryan finally relaxed. John made jokes all day long. George enjoyed every second. Adam smiled more than usual. That night they had dinner and toasted to the best day of our lives, and everyone repeated it. In the following days they enjoyed New York as if the world was theirs. Bars, tours, shopping, no limits. The procession story became a joke. John told it laughing at every dinner. "We were stopped for 10 minutes because of a procession. Ryan almost got out of the car to push them," said John. 15 minutes, George corrected. The vacation went by fast, and when the last day came, the four came down with their suitcases, loaded the car, and got ready to go back home. "Who's driving on the way back?" asked George. "I'll drive," said John. "You guys rest." Ryan looked at him with a face that said he didn't trust him. But he was too tired to argue. "Okay, but no craziness," said Ryan. "Leave it to me," John replied, taking the car key. They packed the bags in the trunk. John sat in the driver's seat, Ryan beside him, George and Adam in the back. And then, before starting the car, something happened. John had his hand on the key, ready to turn it, when he smelled something. A strong smell of roses. But it wasn't that weak smell of perfume or cleaning product. It was a real smell. Like someone had placed a bouquet of fresh roses inside the car at that exact moment. John stopped, looked at the dashboard, looked at the passenger seat. Nothing. There was nothing in the car that could explain that smell. He stayed still for about 3 seconds, his hand still on the key. "You going or not?" said Ryan. John shook his head, as if shooing away a thought, and started the car. The smell gradually faded until it disappeared. He didn't mention it to anyone. What was he going to say? That he smelled roses? They'd laugh at him. So he left the parking lot and got on the street. The mood inside the car was good, music playing, George and Adam in the back talking about the best moments of the trip, Ryan on his phone, answering work messages he'd ignored all week. John was driving calmly, following the GPS. "Dude, that game was insane," said George. "Never seen anything like it." "And Ryan's face when we almost lost the tickets," said Adam, laughing. "It wasn't funny," Ryan replied, without looking up from his phone. "It was very funny," said John, looking through the rearview mirror with a smile. The conversation went back and forth. Laughter, memories, teasing. All normal. All exactly as it should be. You know, when everything's so good it seems impossible to go wrong. When the world seems perfect, and you feel like nothing can ruin that moment. Streets of New York, moderate traffic, nothing out of the ordinary. At a certain part of the route, the street became emptier. Fewer cars, fewer people on the sidewalk. A quieter stretch. They approached an intersection. The light was green for them. Open. John just had to keep his speed and go straight through, and that's when John saw it. Before the intersection, standing, a woman. But she wasn't just any woman. She wore a blue mantle, long, that covered her head and went down almost to her feet. She was completely still, standing there as if time didn't exist around her. And she was looking directly at him, at John, into his eyes. That woman's face transmitted something John had never felt in his entire life. It wasn't fear. It wasn't sadness. It was something much bigger than any of those things. It was as if she knew him, as if she knew who he was, what he had done, what he had said, every gesture, every joke, every moment of mockery. And even so, even knowing all of that, her face had no judgment. It had something else, something John had no words to describe, something that entered inside him as if someone had opened a door he didn't even know existed. The world around him disappeared. The sound of the music disappeared. His friends' voices disappeared. The street noise disappeared. For 1 full second, maybe 2, only that woman and him existed, nothing else. As if the universe had stopped so he could see only him, nobody else. And something inside John, something he didn't control, that didn't come from anywhere he knew, made his foot move, off the accelerator, onto the brake. He braked, hard, on the green light. The car stopped. Ryan was thrown forward by the sudden brake. His phone flew out of his hand. "What's going on?" Ryan shouted. "John, the light's green," said George. "Have you lost your mind?" said Ryan, picking up his phone from the car floor. "Why did you brake?" They didn't understand. They looked at the street and saw nothing, no obstacle, no pedestrian, no reason to have braked. "Come on, John, go," said Ryan. John didn't answer. He was staring at the place where the woman had been. His mouth was half open. His hands were gripping the steering wheel. "John," said Adam from the back seat. His voice was different. It wasn't complaining. It was concern. And in that exact second, when the three were complaining, a huge truck crossed the intersection. At high speed, went straight through the red light, as if the light didn't exist. The truck passed exactly at the point where their car would be if John hadn't braked, exactly at the point. The noise of the truck passing was so loud it shook the car. The wind it raised rocked the vehicle. If they had gone through the green light, the truck would have hit the car. Nobody said anything. The music kept playing. But nobody was listening. Ryan had his hand on the dashboard. His eyes were wide, fixed on the point where the truck had passed. George, in the back seat, had both hands gripping the front seat, his mouth open. Adam was motionless, looking forward without blinking, and John. John was pale, completely pale. His hands were shaking, really shaking. He looked back at the place where the woman in the blue mantle had been. There was nobody. There was no blue mantle. Nothing. As if she had never been there. Have you ever been through something like that? Something that happened so fast, your brain took a while to understand? Nobody spoke for about 10 seconds. 10 seconds, that felt like 10 minutes. Ryan was the first to move. Slowly, he raised his hand and pressed the button to turn off the music. Silence took over the car. "Pull over," said Ryan. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Pull over the car." John obeyed without saying anything. Ryan put both hands on his face. Stayed like that for a while. "That truck," George started, but didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Everyone had seen it. Everyone knew. The truck had already disappeared down the street. Kept going, as if nothing had happened. The driver probably didn't even see the car stopped at the intersection. Probably kept driving, listening to the radio, thinking about something else. While inside that car, 4 men were trying to remember how to breathe. If we had gone through... Adam started, but stopped, swallowed hard. "Why did you brake?" Ryan asked. This time his voice wasn't irritated. It was someone who needed an answer to something that didn't make sense. John didn't answer right away. His eyes were fixed on the steering wheel. His hands still shaking. "John," Ryan said again, "why did you brake? The light was green." John swallowed hard. Opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I saw a woman," John said. "What woman?" George asked. "There was nobody on the street." "There was," John said. "Before the intersection. She was standing there, looking at me." "John, there was nobody," George said. "I was looking at the street." "I know what I saw," John replied. His voice was firm. "She was wearing a blue mantle, long, covered her head. She was looking directly at me, directly into my eyes." Silence again. Ryan looked at George. Neither of them said anything, and then Adam spoke. Adam, the quiet one. The one who never gave an opinion. The one who always answered, "Whatever." "You guys remember the procession?" Adam said. Ryan turned his face. George stopped breathing for a second. John closed his eyes. Nobody needed to ask what procession. Everyone remembered right away. The procession, the mockery, The lady who came to the car and handed them the little pamphlet of the Virgin Mary, the prayer on the back, her words. And what they did afterwards, laughed, treated it like a joke. Now nobody was laughing. "A woman in a blue mantle," Adam said, almost to himself. "The Virgin Mary." Nobody breathed for about 2 seconds. George opened his mouth to speak. He was the rational one. He was the one who had an explanation for everything. "It could have been the reflection of something," George said. "Something blue." "George," John said, turning back to look at him. "I looked into her eyes. She looked into mine. That wasn't a reflection." George didn't answer. He wanted to have a logical, rational explanation that would put everything in order, but he didn't have one. There was no explanation for the fact that John had braked at a green light for no apparent reason. There was no explanation for the truck passing at that exact second. "And before I started the car?" John said, almost in a whisper. "What?" Adam asked. "In the hotel parking lot, I smelled roses, strong, like there was a bouquet inside the car. I looked everywhere. There was nothing. And then it disappeared. You know when silence speaks louder than any words? The four stayed there, on the shoulder, inside the car. For how long, none of them knows. Time had lost its meaning." "John," Ryan finally said. His voice was different. It was someone who was scared. "Thank you." John turned, looked at Ryan. "It wasn't me," John said. John wasn't the hero of the story. John was the same guy who had filmed the Pilgrims laughing. The same guy who had made a dismissive gesture at the image of the Virgin Mary. The same guy who had turned dozens of people's faith into a joke. And even so, someone had protected him. Someone had made him break, had saved not only him, but all four of them. You know what's hardest to understand? It's not what happened. It's why it happened. The protection came precisely to the one who had been disrespectful, precisely to the one who had mocked, to the one who, by any logic, didn't deserve it. George took the wheel. Nobody argued. The trip back was the longest any of them had ever taken, not because the route was long, but because the silence stretched every minute. 2 weeks later, Ryan called his mother. They hadn't spoken in 7 months. When she answered and said, "Hi, son," Ryan just said, "Hi, Mom, I'm sorry." They both cried together, and for the first time, he didn't try to control the situation. George didn't become religious. But he stopped being certain that nothing existed beyond what could be measured. Adam started giving his opinion. When they asked what he thought, the answer was no longer whatever. It was what he truly felt. And John never made jokes about faith again. Never again. A friend at a barbecue started imitating a priest. Everyone laughed. John didn't. The friend found it strange. In the old days, you'd be the first to laugh. John just said, "I changed," and bought a blue rosary. He didn't know how to pray, but he carried it every day. If you asked him why he carried it, he'd probably shrug and say, "I don't know." But he knew. He knew exactly why. The friendship between the four changed, not in a dramatic way, but it truly changed. Before, they were four guys who had fun together, everything on the surface, everything light, nothing deep. After that day, they had something more. They had something they didn't know how to tell anyone, so they didn't tell. But between them, they knew. 6 months later, on a Thursday night, the four were having dinner together. Nothing special. A pizza at a simple place. And none of the four complained, because in 6 months the definition of good time had changed for them. Before, a good time was spending. Now, a good time was being together. They talked about normal things. Ryan was saying his mother was going to visit him the following month. John asked for a second slice and made a joke about the cheese sticking to the paper. Adam laughed, with both feet resting on the chair beside him, relaxed in a way that wouldn't have been possible before. And then John stopped eating. He stared at his plate, the pizza slice in his hand suspended in the air as if he had frozen. "What's wrong?" Ryan asked. "Nothing," John said. just remembered something. Do you guys think she knew? John said. That we were going to go through that? I don't know, George said. I think so, Adam said. Simple, direct. And nobody disagreed. Nobody mocked. Ryan didn't say anything, and John looked out the restaurant window. Outside, the street was busy. People walking, cars passing, city lights, everything normal. But for him, nothing was like before. Because since that day, every time he stopped at a red light, every time he saw someone praying, he knew. He didn't understand, but he knew. And there are things in life we don't need to understand. We just need to know. Did John see something real at that intersection? Was it imagination? Was it a reflection? Was it coincidence? They don't know. And maybe you'll never know either. But the truck was real, and they weren't in its path. And sometimes that's enough. Before we finish, I want to make you an invitation. Come join our prayer community for the Virgin Mary, formed by people from all over the world who unite in faith and hope. If you feel in your heart the desire to enter this chain of prayer, click below, become a channel member, and come pray with us. And look, if you made it here, to the end of Ryan's, John's, Adam's, and George's story, do something for me. Write in the comments blue mantle, the color that saved 4 lives at that intersection. I want to see how many hearts this story truly reached. And every time I read blue mantle in the comments, I'll know that one more person believes that miracles still happen. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Write in the comments about some miracle you've witnessed or that someone told you about, because sometimes we need to hear that these things happen. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that even when we make mistakes, even when we fail, protection can come anyway. May the Virgin Mary continue blessing and protecting you and your family. Amen.